One simple Social Security mistake could quietly cost you more than $100,000 over the course of your retirement. That isn't clickbait. In fact, many retirees don't even realize they've made the mistake until years later, when changing it is difficult, or in some cases, impossible. Imagine two neighbors. They worked similar jobs, earned similar salaries, retired around the same time. Yet one receives hundreds of dollars more every single month. Not because they were luckier, not because they worked longer, but because they made one better decision before filing for Social Security. Today, we're counting down the 12 biggest Social Security mistakes Americans are making in 2026. Some of these mistakes permanently reduce your monthly benefits. Others can trigger Medicare penalties, create unexpected tax bills, or cause you to miss benefits you didn't even know existed. And stay with me until the end, because mistake number 1 is the mistake financial advisors say costs retirees the most money over a lifetime, and it's much more common than people think. Let's begin. Mistake number 12. Claiming benefits too early without looking at the bigger picture. If I asked 100 people, when should you start collecting Social Security? You'd probably hear the same answer over and over. Age 62. After all, that's the first age when many people become eligible. So naturally, people think, if I can collect now, why wait? That's exactly where many retirees make their first major mistake. Here's something most people don't realize. Social Security isn't rewarding you for filing early. It's giving you a choice. Receive smaller checks for a longer period, or potentially larger checks by waiting longer. That single decision can affect every monthly payment you receive for the rest of your life. Let's look at a simple example. Suppose Linda qualifies for $2,200 per month if she waits until her full retirement age. Instead, she files at age 62 because she's excited to start receiving benefits. Her monthly payment is permanently reduced. At first, she feels great. She's receiving money while her friend Sarah is still waiting. But 5 years pass, then 10, then 15. Sarah eventually begins collecting much larger monthly checks. Now imagine both women live into their late 80s. Suddenly, the question isn't, who received the first payment? The real question becomes, who received more money over an entire retirement? That's the calculation many people never make. Now, does that mean claiming early is always wrong? Absolutely not. If someone has health concerns, needs income immediately, or has other personal circumstances, claiming early may be the smartest decision. The mistake isn't filing early. The mistake is filing early without understanding the long-term trade-off. Before you submit your application, ask yourself one simple question. Am I making this decision because it's the best long-term strategy, or simply because it's the earliest opportunity? That one question could influence your retirement income for decades. But even choosing the perfect claiming age doesn't guarantee you're maximizing your benefits, because the next mistake affects millions of married couples. And many of them never even realize they're eligible for additional money. Mistake number 11, ignoring spousal benefits. Let me ask you something. If you're married, have you and your spouse ever compared your expected Social Security benefits side by side? Surprisingly, many couples never do. Instead, each person focuses only on their own retirement benefit, and that's where thousands of dollars can quietly disappear. Here's why. Social Security isn't always based only on your own work history. Depending on your situation, one spouse may qualify for benefits based on the other spouse's earnings record. That surprises a lot of people. Imagine Robert spent 40 years working full-time. Meanwhile, Susan worked part-time for many years while raising their children. When retirement arrives, Susan assumes she'll only receive the smaller benefit she earned herself. So she files without asking any questions. Years later, she discovers she may have qualified for a larger monthly payment through spousal benefits. No one made a mistake processing her application. She simply didn't know the option existed. What's even more surprising, some divorced individuals may also qualify for benefits based on a former spouse's work record if certain eligibility requirements are met. Most people never hear about these rules until they're already retired. That's why retirement decisions should never be based on advice from friends, neighbors, or random social media posts. Your situation is unique, and one conversation with the Social Security Administration or careful research before filing could make a meaningful difference in your retirement income. Now, you might be thinking, what if I claim Social Security but continue working? That's where another costly misunderstanding catches thousands of retirees every year. Many believe they can earn as much as they want without affecting their benefits. But that's not always true. Let's talk about that in the next section. Mistake number 10, continuing to work without understanding the earnings limit. Retirement doesn't always mean completely stopping work. In fact, millions of Americans continue working after claiming Social Security. Some work part-time. Others start consulting. Some even launch small businesses. At first, it sounds like the perfect plan. Collect Social Security, earn extra income, and enjoy the best of both worlds. But here's where many retirees get an unpleasant surprise. If you begin receiving Social Security before reaching your full retirement age and continue earning wages from a job or self-employment, your monthly benefits may be temporarily reduced if your earnings exceed the annual limit. Notice one important word: temporarily. Many people panic when they hear this rule. They assume the government is taking away their money forever. That isn't what usually happens. Instead, some benefits may be withheld while you're under full retirement age. Later, once you reach full retirement age, those withheld benefits are generally taken into account when your benefit is recalculated. But if you didn't know this beforehand, it can seriously disrupt your retirement budget. Imagine David. He's 63. He retires from his full-time career, but accepts a consulting job because he enjoys staying active. Everything seems fine. His income is higher than expected. Then one day, a notice arrives explaining that part of his Social Security benefit is being withheld because his earnings exceeded the annual limit. David didn't break any rules. He simply didn't know the rules. There's another detail many retirees misunderstand. Not every type of retirement income counts toward the earnings test. Investment income, pensions, IRA withdrawals, and dividends generally aren't treated the same way as wages from employment or self-employment. That distinction matters, because making decisions based on incorrect assumptions can create unnecessary stress. So before you continue working after claiming benefits, take a few minutes to understand how your earnings may affect your Social Security. It could save you from a very unpleasant surprise. But speaking of unpleasant surprises, the next mistake doesn't involve working at all. It involves a deadline that many retirees don't even know exists, until it costs them money every single year. Mistake number 9, missing Medicare enrollment deadlines. Ask almost anyone approaching retirement, what happens when you turn 65? Most people immediately answer, you get Medicare. That's true. But here's the part many people don't understand. Turning 65 doesn't automatically mean everything happens for you, and assuming it does can become one of the most expensive mistakes in retirement. Here's why. Medicare has specific enrollment periods. Miss those deadlines without qualifying for an exception, and you may face permanent late enrollment penalties or delays in coverage. Imagine Karen. She's healthy, rarely visits a doctor. She tells herself, I'll worry about Medicare next year. It sounds harmless. After all, she hardly ever needs medical care. But months later, she learns she missed an important enrollment window. Now she faces higher costs that could follow her for years. The painful part? Nothing unexpected happened. She simply didn't know the deadline existed. Retirement isn't only about replacing your paycheck. It's also about protecting yourself from expensive mistakes that are completely avoidable. If you're approaching age 65, ask yourself these questions. Will you still be working? Will your employer provide health insurance? Are you already receiving Social Security? Do you qualify for a special enrollment period? Those answers determine when Medicare enrollment makes the most sense. A few minutes of planning today could save you thousands over the course of retirement. But there's another problem that's becoming even more common. It's not caused by paperwork. It's not caused by deadlines. It's caused by something people hear every single day from neighbors, family members, Facebook, and YouTube comments. Mistake number 8, believing common Social Security myths. Let's play a quick game. How many of these have you heard before? Social Security is going bankrupt. Everyone should claim at 62. If you keep working, you'll lose your benefits forever. The government automatically gives you every benefit you qualify for. If you've heard at least one of those, you're not alone. Millions of Americans hear the same advice every year. The problem is, simple advice is often wrong. Let's start with the biggest myth. Everyone should claim at 62. We've already seen why that isn't true. For some retirees, claiming early makes perfect sense. For others, waiting could significantly increase lifetime income. There isn't one correct age for everyone. Another common myth says, if you work after claiming Social Security, you'll lose your benefits forever. Again, that's not how the system works. As we discussed earlier, some benefits may be temporarily withheld before full retirement age if earnings exceed the annual limit. That's very different from permanently losing your money. Here's another dangerous assumption. Some retirees believe the government automatically finds every benefit they're eligible for. Unfortunately, many benefit decisions still depend on understanding your options and filing appropriately. Imagine two neighbors. John listens to advice he heard at a weekend barbecue. Mary spends 30 minutes reviewing official Social Security information before filing. Both retire the same year. 5 years later, John wonders why his monthly benefit isn't what he expected. Mary doesn't. Not because she was smarter, but because she verified the facts before making one of the biggest financial decisions of her life. Here's something important to remember. Retirement decisions shouldn't be based on rumors. They should be based on reliable information. Because when your retirement may last 20 or 30 years, one bad piece of advice can become a very expensive mistake. So far, we've covered mistakes that happen before and shortly after retirement. But from this point forward, the mistakes become even more costly. In the next section, we'll uncover the errors that many retirees don't discover until years later, when fixing them becomes much more difficult. Before we continue, if you've watched this far, you're already ahead of millions of retirees, because the next 3 mistakes usually aren't discovered immediately. People often find them years later, when correcting them becomes difficult or incredibly expensive. Let's continue. Mistake number 7. Never checking your Social Security earnings record. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you checked your Social Security earnings record? If your answer is never, you're not alone. Most Americans assume the Social Security Administration has a perfect record of every paycheck they've ever earned. And in most cases, they do. But most cases isn't the same as every case. Employers make mistakes. Payroll errors happen. Sometimes wages aren't reported correctly. Sometimes earnings are missing altogether. Here's why that's important. Your retirement benefit is largely based on your lifetime earnings that were subject to Social Security taxes. So if part of your earnings history is missing, your monthly retirement benefit could be lower than it should be. Imagine this. Maria is only 2 years away from retirement. One afternoon, she decides to create her online Social Security account just to make sure everything looks right. As she's reviewing her earnings history, 1 year immediately catches her attention. According to the record, she earned only $8,000 that year, but she clearly remembers working full-time and earning much more. At first, she thinks it's a glitch. Then she digs through old tax records. Sure enough, the earnings reported to Social Security were incorrect. Because she discovered the problem before filing for benefits, she still has time to gather documents and contact the Social Security Administration. Now imagine she never checked. That missing income could quietly reduce her monthly benefit for the rest of her retirement, and she might never know why. Think of your earnings record like your credit report. You don't check it because you expect a mistake. You check it because mistakes are much easier to fix early than years later. Spending 10 minutes today could increase your income for decades. But even if your earnings record is perfect, there's another surprise waiting for many retirees, one that often arrives during tax season. Mistake number 6, assuming your Social Security benefits are completely tax-free. Here's a question that surprises many new retirees. Do you think every Social Security check is completely tax-free? If you answered yes, you're in good company, because that's exactly what millions of Americans believe. Unfortunately, that's not always how it works. Depending on your total income, part of your Social Security benefits may become subject to federal income tax. Notice something important. We're not saying everyone pays taxes on Social Security. Many retirees don't. Others pay taxes on only part of their benefits. It all depends on the bigger financial picture. Think of retirement income like filling a bucket. One stream is your Social Security check. Another might be withdrawals from a traditional IRA. Another could be pension income. Maybe you still work part-time. Perhaps you earn interest or dividends. Each stream pours into the same bucket. As that bucket fills, the tax rules may begin to change. Imagine Tom. His retirement starts smoothly. His Social Security covers most of his monthly expenses. Then he decides to renovate his home. To pay for it, he withdraws a large amount from his retirement account. Everything seems fine, until tax season arrives. Suddenly, he discovers those extra withdrawals changed his tax situation. The renovation wasn't the mistake, the lack of planning was. The lesson here isn't to avoid using your retirement savings. It's to understand how one financial decision can affect another, because retirement isn't a collection of separate choices. Everything is connected. And speaking of retirement accounts, the next mistake catches people who believe saving money is the only thing that matters. Ironically, their biggest problem begins after they stop saving. Mistake number 5, ignoring required minimum distributions. For decades, you've probably heard the same advice. Save more, invest consistently, build your retirement account. And that's excellent advice. But here's what many retirees don't realize. Eventually, the government expects you to begin taking money back out of certain retirement accounts. These required withdrawals are called required minimum distributions, or simply RMDs. The name sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. The government allowed many retirement accounts to grow with tax advantages for years. Eventually, it wants taxes to be paid on that money. That's why many retirees are required to withdraw at least a minimum amount each year after reaching the applicable age. Now imagine Susan. She spent 40 years building her traditional IRA. She's proud of her savings. She doesn't actually need the money yet, so she decides to leave the account untouched. Seems responsible, right? Months later, she learned she was required to take a minimum withdrawal. Because she didn't know the rule existed, she now faces unnecessary tax consequences. The mistake wasn't saving too much. The mistake was assuming retirement planning ends after retirement begins. Here's another detail many people overlook. Not every retirement account follows the same withdrawal rules. Some accounts have different requirements. Others have exceptions. That's why it's important to understand the specific rules that apply to your own retirement savings. Because the goal isn't simply building wealth, it's knowing how to use it wisely. Now we've reached the final stretch. The next 4 mistakes aren't about paperwork. They aren't about deadlines. They're about the decisions that shape the next 20 or even 30 years of your retirement. And one of those mistakes is almost invisible, until it's far too late to change it. We've reached the final 4. If you've stayed with me this far, you're already avoiding mistakes that quietly cost many retirees thousands of dollars. But these final 4 mistakes are different. They don't usually happen because people are careless. They happen because retirement is more connected than most people realize. One decision affects another, and another, until years later you finally see the bigger picture. Let's begin. Mistake number 4, making retirement decisions one at a time instead of building a strategy. Here's a question. Have you ever worked on a 1,000-piece puzzle? Imagine trying to complete it while looking at only one piece at a time. That's exactly how many people approach retirement. They ask, when should I claim Social Security? But they never ask, how does that decision affect everything else? Because Social Security doesn't exist by itself. It connects to Medicare. It connects to taxes. It connects to retirement savings. It connects to part-time work. It even affects what happens after one spouse passes away. Imagine 2 couples. The first couple makes every decision separately. They claim Social Security, then think about Medicare later. They withdraw retirement savings whenever they need money. They never discuss taxes until April arrives. Everything feels manageable, until unexpected costs begin piling up. Now imagine another couple. Before retiring, they spend one weekend creating a simple retirement roadmap. Nothing complicated, just a plan. How much income will we need every month? When should we claim benefits? What happens if healthcare costs increase? How will taxes affect us? What happens if one of us lives much longer than the other? They don't predict the future. They simply prepare for it. And that preparation gives them confidence instead of uncertainty. Because retirement isn't about making one perfect decision. It's about making several good decisions that work together. Mistake number 3, believing you can easily change your mind later. Have you ever bought something, only to think, if I don't like it, I'll just return it? Many people approach Social Security exactly the same way. They think, I'll claim now. If I change my mind later, I'll simply fix it. Unfortunately, Social Security isn't designed like that. Some choices can be changed under limited circumstances, but many claiming decisions have strict rules, deadlines, and long-term consequences. Imagine Carol. She turns 62. Friends tell her, go ahead, start collecting now. You can always change it later. Without doing much research, she files her application. 3 years later, she learns that waiting could have significantly increased her monthly income. She tries to reverse her decision. Only then does she discover that changing course isn't nearly as simple as she expected. Now, this doesn't mean everyone should delay claiming. Some people genuinely need the income. Others have health concerns or family responsibilities. Those are all valid reasons. The mistake isn't claiming early. The mistake is assuming you'll always have another chance to rethink the decision. Sometimes, the decision you make today follows you for the rest of your retirement. Mistake number 2, planning for the next year instead of the next 30 years. Here's something many people forget. Retirement today is very different from retirement 50 years ago. Many Americans now spend 20, 25, or even 30 years in retirement. That's a long time. Think back 25 years. How much has the world changed? Prices, healthcare, housing, technology, everything. Now imagine trying to support yourself through another 25 years without a long-term plan. Let's compare two friends. James retires at 62. He focuses on one thing, getting the biggest check as quickly as possible. He never asks what life might cost 15 years from now. His decisions solve today's problems, but not tomorrow's. Michael takes a different approach. Before filing, he estimates future healthcare costs. He thinks about inflation. He plans for unexpected expenses. He considers how long his savings may need to last. Neither man can predict the future, but one is preparing for it. Retirement isn't a sprint. It's one of the longest financial journeys most people will ever take. The question isn't, can I afford retirement today? The better question is, will my plan still work 20 years from now? And that brings us to the biggest mistake of all. Mistake number 1, treating Social Security like a single decision instead of part of your entire retirement plan. If you remember only one thing from today's video, make it this. The biggest Social Security mistake isn't choosing the wrong claiming age. It's making that decision without looking at the rest of your retirement. Because Social Security is only one piece of a much bigger picture. It affects your taxes, your Medicare decisions, your retirement savings, your spouse, your survivor benefits, your monthly budget, even the lifestyle you'll be able to enjoy 20 years from now. Imagine two couples. The first couple rushes to claim benefits the moment they're eligible. It feels exciting. Money finally starts arriving. Mission accomplished. Or so they think. Years later, healthcare costs rise. Taxes are higher than expected. One spouse passes away. Their retirement income changes dramatically. Only then do they realize they never had a retirement strategy. They only had a claiming strategy. Now imagine another couple. Before filing, they spend time understanding the entire picture. They estimate future expenses. They learn Medicare deadlines. They review taxes. They compare claiming options. They understand how one spouse's decision affects the other. Most importantly, they don't let emotions make permanent financial decisions. Here's the truth. No one can perfectly predict the future. Markets change, laws change, health changes, life changes. But people who understand how the pieces fit together are usually far better prepared when those changes happen. And that's the real goal. Not finding the perfect answer, but making informed decisions with the best information available today. Powerful ending, higher retention, and more subscribers. Here's something I'd like you to remember. Every year, millions of Americans retire. Some spend the next 20 or 30 years wondering, did I make the right decision? Others retire with confidence. Not because they know everything, but because they took the time to understand the rules before making choices they couldn't easily undo. If this video helps even one person avoid a costly retirement mistake, then it was worth making. Now I'd love to hear from you. Which mistake surprised you the most? Was it claiming too early? Spousal benefits? Medicare deadlines? Or something else? Leave a comment below. I read as many as I can, and your question might inspire our next video. And if you found this guide helpful, subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week we break down Social Security, Medicare, retirement planning, taxes, and other important topics into simple, easy-to-understand explanations so you can make smarter decisions with more confidence. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourself, take care of your future, and I'll see you in the next video.